here we go.
Welcome to the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast. Pat and Scott here. We are closing in. Just had the Hall of Fame game and induction ceremony. Coach Vermeil, among others, making their way into a gold jacket and a bust in Canton. We are going to talk about some players this time around that may also find their way into Canton, maybe in like 10, 15 years, not right this minute. We're talking about some quarterbacks and rankings going into the 2022 season. It's that time of year, folks. Camps are flying around hot and heavy. Not too many crazy injuries, but a few. But we're definitely hearing some rumblings. All those off-season signings and trades and roster moves by your team and how they're going to affect your fantasy football team for the good or the bad. Whether or not you have keeper leagues and dynasties or just a basic redraft league. We're going to touch base right now on the quarterbacks and who we like a little bit more than each other, a little less than each other. We have a couple of guys here that, we agree to disagree. So we're going to explain that overall and just our overall concepts of how we rank these guys and the who, what, when, where, whys, and hows. But obviously you have your own favorites, but we're going to give you a few guys to maybe keep an eye on throughout the season. And these are guys that, again, we just have strong feelings for or against. So we'll touch base on that.
So the quarterbacks, what we're looking at is basically, with ranking quarterbacks, you're going to be fairly close. I think you and I were, within 2 or 3 spots on most of the quarterbacks, but we did have a few guys where we were, 5, 6 spots off, some a little bit more than that, and we'll get into that as we dive into these quarterbacks. But basically, what we tried to do was look at some of the bigger gaps between where you and I have guys ranked, and consensus, I think we still come in fairly even with the market as far as where guys are going off the board. Again, some of the guys that you're really high on, I might be a little bit lower on, and vice versa, but we do have some pretty decent sized discrepancies. Like I said, 5 or 6 spots in the quarterback position is pretty big between the two of our ranks. And we like to put out there why we feel the way that we feel, and give some information on these quarterbacks and why we may be selecting some guys earlier or later in drafts. So before we get into all of that, just want to remind everybody about our promotion, our giveaway, the Darius Slay jersey that we have that we're going to be giving away here in a few weeks. All you need to do for that, folks, is just follow the show, leave us a review, take screenshots of the review and of the show, and email them to our email address. That is the 9routeFFB@gmail.com. Make sure to get those entries in. We will be selecting a winner in a few weeks. And remember that we did say last week you can enter that on any platform. So if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, you can send us one there. You can go on iHeartRadio and send us a review there. You can do another one on Google Podcasts if you want. So you have multiple ways to enter. You can, put in more than one entry if you want. And we encourage you to do that. It definitely helps us out to get those follows and those reviews out there on the different websites and different places that you can find the show. So go out and do that and hit us up on the email and enter yourself in that contest.
Yeah, it's a nice piece of material there, folks. 100% United States cotton. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, it is an autographed Darius Slay jersey from pristineauction.com. It's really nice. It's, listen, if nobody enters this contest, which I'm kind of hoping, I have no problem keeping that thing because it's a nice jersey. Trust me. I've taken it out of the box and looked at it. It's really nice. But get your entries in, and we will pick a winner in a few weeks.
Sounds good, folks. Get in there, get that jersey, get a little piece of memorabilia to hang in the man cave, the she shed, whatever you're looking to do there. But definitely a quality item. And Darius Slay looking to have a good season for the Eagles. We're hoping for that as well here at the 9 round. So what do you say, Pat? Let's dive in. You wanna give them the lowdown on the hoedown here with the QBs?
Quarterbacks. Yeah, so what I'd like to do is real quick is just go over our consensus rankings. This is basically just an average of where you have guys ranked versus where I have guys ranked. I'm not going to go over where we have guys individually. We will hit some of those as we go, but basically our consensus for the top 15 quarterbacks or so. Actually, I'll read through the first. I'll read through the first 20 quarterbacks. That'll pretty much cover all the guys that we're going to be hitting in this episode, except for one, which we'll get to a little bit later. So we have Josh Allen as the number one quarterback. Obviously, 2 number one seasons back to back. It's kind of hard to put him anywhere else. We have Justin Herbert at number 2, Lamar Jackson at 3, Jalen Hurts at number 4, Mahomes at 5, Kyler Murray at 6, Tom Brady at 7, Dak Prescott at 8, Russell Wilson at 9, Joe Burrow rounding out the top 10, Aaron Rodgers at 11, Derek Carr at 12, Stafford at 13. Then we have Cousins at 14, Lance at 15, Tua Tagovailoa at 16, Justin Fields comes in at 17, Winston at 18, Trevor Lawrence at number 19, and then Matt Ryan at QB 20 for our consensus ranks. Like I said, that is fairly consistent with ADP. It's fairly consistent with where, a lot of other, guys have quarterbacks ranked. I think that for the most part, quarterback is probably the easiest position to rank. It just, you kind of, look at talent, look at the weapons around, each of these quarterbacks and, kind of make a determination on, where you think they're going to fall. Speaking of surrounding talent, we have a pretty big discrepancy. Our first big discrepancy is actually at Patrick Mahomes, who comes in at number 5 on our overall consensus. And the reason he's actually down that far is because I have him ranked a lot lower. You actually have him at 2. I have him ranked at QB 8.
I bumped him to 3. I did bump him to 3.
Oh, okay. So you're
in a recent update. Yes.
Okay. So you're at 3. I'm at 8. That still puts him pretty much at QB 5 for us, tied with Kyler Murray now. So I'll dive in first here since I'm much farther off of.
Yeah, man. What's up with the hate? Come on.
It's the name. It's a terrible name. I hate it, and so looking back, Patrick Mahomes is always, one of the top guys in drafts, or has, I should say, always. He has been the last few years because of, the incredible season he had in 2018. He finished as the QB1, 429 fantasy points. And that's great. But in the past 3 seasons, he's been the QB4 twice and the QB8 once. And I think you saw last year, at least I noticed, and I know, watching the games, a lot of the analysts noticed that Kansas City's offense struggled a little bit with the deep ball. Teams started playing a deeper coverage, kind of making the Chiefs throw underneath a little bit more often and, not allowing them to rely on those big plays. And what that does is it does 2 things. First of all, it makes the offense have to string together a series of plays, 8 to, say 12 plays in a row, where you have to get positive yards, you have to get first downs, you have to keep the chains moving. Whereas if you can beat a team with a big play, even if it's a 4 or 5 play drive, you get one chunk play for 40 yards. You're adding to those stats, obviously. But what you're also doing is you're taking a lot less time off the clock, which means that you're going to be getting in a lot more plays. The Chiefs were number 2 and number 3 in plays in 2019 and 2020, dropped all the way down to 7th in the amount of plays that they ran in 2021. And I think that with Tyreek Hill gone, the way to beat the Chiefs the blueprint has been put out there. And so I feel like you're going to see more of the same this year that you saw last year, but you're going to see it from the very beginning of the season instead of 3, 4, 5 games in where you saw it last year. And as good as Patrick Mahomes is, I don't think he's got the weapons this year. I may be proved wrong. He may be able to turn Juju Smith-Schuster into something in, what he was, back in 2017 when he was a rookie and had that great season. That's 100%, in the realm of possibility. But for me, without Tyreek Hill taking the top off of the defense and being that deep threat that you have to worry about on every play, I just don't see Kansas City's offense being as good this year as it has been in the past. And there's already a QB8 finish in Patrick Mahomes' career. So, me having him at QB8, I don't think is too far out of the question, especially considering that his rushing numbers were down last year compared to his previous 4 years in the league, or 3 years that he had been a starter. So that's another element that he doesn't really add with his legs as much as some of these other quarterbacks that I have ranked higher. So that's where I'm at with Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. I'm not going to be drafting him in the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks. I'm not going to be taking him in the 3rd or 4th round where he's going in drafts. I'm just not interested in paying up for a guy like Mahomes, as good as he is, skill-wise. It's about value in drafts. And for me, I wouldn't be willing to take him until, maybe the 6th or 7th round, personally.
I hear you. I'm not – I know watching that playoff game against Cincinnati, you really kind of saw parts of him maybe get exposed a little bit. But again, I think that's the offense maybe stagnating as a whole. Like, they don't have – it's an Andy Reid offense. So, we're very familiar with the fact that running backs really don't get involved outside of the passing game too much. Yeah, you're taking away Tyreek Hill. You did add Juju Smith-Schuster, who I know for some people it's like, yeah, so what? You forgot last year he was hurt, but he's still a pretty solid wide receiver. He doesn't have the speed. He's not even close to what Tyreek Hill brought you to take the top off of a defense. They did add Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who we all know is, again, a blazing force down the field. It's just that the guy has trouble catching the football. But if you have somebody to help stretch that out, I think that'll help them. I got to think that they're going to try to circle the wagons a little bit and stop and look and see what went wrong last year, where, for lack of a better concept, that they probably should have lost that game against Buffalo. Buffalo's defense just kind of that game was just one for the ages, with both offenses going back and forth. And again, they probably were the better team. I think we'd all admit that. And he's still a great quarterback. I know what you're saying, that yes, maybe temper expectations, see what happens this year. But overall, I mean, again, looking at how we're ranking them and stuff like that, I'd still take him in fantasy. I still take him a little bit over Lamar Jackson, because yes, where Lamar has those like monster games and can be that guy. As far as total overall consistency, yeah, he blows up, and then sometimes he has a few stinkers and games where you wouldn't get him. Mahomes has been one of the most consistent quarterbacks over the last few years. I mean, you're talking about like Aaron Rodgers, who, we're both ranking a little bit lower than we probably should have. He's going to end up being like a top 5 just on accident probably. But Josh Allen has been terrific. Justin Herbert, really good. And pound for pound is probably maybe the better quarterback in that whole division. I mean, again, you are talking about, now you added Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, who we're going to get to. I think with Mahomes, I know somebody put out something saying about basically if you take away it's like his first read, then you just make him scramble and then you get him. And again, you did see that where they were pressing him all game long, Cincinnati, and they didn't have a vaunted defense, but they just made him look silly. And I feel like some of that definitely goes back to coaching, where if it's not working, you got to figure out what's going to work, what's going to make it happen. I can't see Mahomes being that far down the trough, so to speak. I don't see him being, again, worse than a Dak Prescott. I don't see him like Kyler Murray even last year. I know he had some injuries and they've added some pieces, but to me, he's light years better than Kyler Murray. Brady's still hanging around. You have those names. To me, Mahomes is easily going to be a top 5 quarterback and probably in the top 3. I feel like the guy's too young and hungry. I know he's got a goofy brother that attracts a lot of attention, and his wife and all that stuff. And, that's social media crap. But I think that, you still have Travis Kelce. And again, a lot of people are fading him pretty hard because they think he's old. To me, Mahomes is still a top 3 fantasy football quarterback. Again, he has the legs to help it out when need be. He makes big plays. I mean, last year they were tops in the league on converting 3rd and 4th down in that offense. And those are the things that happen through your quarterback. You're not expecting Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be that guy to get you that first down. It's Pat Mahomes. Again, they struggled at the end of the year, and I think they kind of blew their wad in that championship game and knew that they got out of there kind of lucky. But again, they were a game away from the Super Bowl. Again, fantasy-wise, I don't think it can go wrong. But yes, you're not going to, unless you're in a super flex league or something like that, you're not going to be, pulling out too early to get him. Allen and Herbert are probably going to go 1-2. Some people like Lamar a little bit better because of the legs and his overall dominance in the offense as a running back as well as a quarterback. But to fade Mahomes, I can't see him being that low. If you have him at 5 or 5-1, fine. But over 5 as an 8. But hey, it's your call.
No, man, I'm glad that, I like the fact that we're off, on some of these guys, because it just goes to show that what you feel about a specific player, the things that you dig into as far as, what you're looking at to rank these guys and project where they're going to finish. Obviously you have a different view on that than I do. And I think that that's healthy and that's good. And that, that helps to spark these discussions. So do I think Mahomes will finish at 8? If he plays a full season, probably not. But for me, my rankings reflect where I would want to draft these guys. And there are a lot of other players that, whether it be because of mobility or, surrounding weapons or, whatever the case is, there's other quarterbacks that I like a little bit better. And, I don't see Mahomes as a value at QB2 or 3 or wherever it is that he's going. So that's regardless of whether I have him at 8 or have him at 5. I'm not getting him in any redraft leagues that I'm in. Now, scoring system matters too. And I think that actually has something to do with some of these other guys that we're going to talk about. If you're in our league of record that we play in is a 6-point passing touchdown league. I like Mahomes in that league a little bit better than, guys like Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson, who I have ahead of Mahomes in my rankings, but I do my rankings based off of, more of a standard scoring system rather than a 6-point touchdown scoring system that we use, because in those instances, those passing touchdowns are in fact worth, the rushing touchdowns are worth a lot more in your 4-point passing touchdown leagues. So yes, if you're in a 6-point passing touchdown league, I do believe that Mahomes is still going to get his touchdowns. I believe that the Chiefs offense is probably going to be, top 5 or 6 in the league. They always are. They have a great head coach and a great coordinator. So in our league, I would take Mahomes a little bit higher than 8. But again, you have to make sure that you are aware of what your scoring settings are in your league so that you can value your players appropriately. All right, let's move on to our second quarterback that we're going to talk about. Our consensus quarterback 12 is Derek Carr. I have him at 15. You are at 10. He is currently going as QB 14, so a little bit closer to where I have him. So you're off. You're a little bit farther off consensus than I am. So why don't you take the lead on this one and tell me why you're so high on Derek Carr?
Devontae Adams. I mean,
argument over.
Yeah, that was the mic drop. And sorry. No, I think that's huge. I mean, you're adding that wide receiver to that offense with that quarterback. And I know they go back to college, which, definitely there's a rapport there that will put you in a good spot. You still have Hunter Renfrow, who's a PPR guy, Darren Waller, who's, a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. He was banged up a lot last year and definitely needs to show that he's still one of those top guys. A lot of people are fading him as well. I think overall that, Derek Carr has been a pretty decent quarterback. He's always flirted with that top 10 as far as, fantasy quarterback. And stats wise where he starts really coming along strong, and you're like, okay, like maybe this year. They started out really, really strong last year, that offense, the first 3 or 4 games. I think it was until they played, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was a Monday Night Chargers game where it just looks like they fell apart. And that whole offense, period. I mean, you had a lot of crazy things happen. You had injuries. You had the Henry Ruggs situation that happened, which really, I think, just totally sucked the wind out of that team, where they had been kind of cruising, doing pretty well. And then, you turn around and you have something like that happen. And I think that really kind of ruined it. And then they kind of circled the wagons and were able to get into the playoffs in a weird scenario there at the end of the year against said Chargers, which again, that was kind of a crazy thing. And I mean, he drove them down the field. He got to the point where, they just about had Cincinnati on the ropes. And yes, does he throw some questionable interceptions, a little bit of hero ball here and there, tries to do too much? Yeah, because he's had to do it his whole career. Overall, yes, he has a losing record as a quarterback. He's had some really, really bad teams around him. But I think from a fantasy perspective, you're adding that dynamic of, again, a Davante Adams. Last year, Carr finished pretty strong, for a fantasy quarterback. He was top 13, based on, certain scoring scenarios and stuff like that. He didn't throw a lot of touchdowns, 23 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. So you figure with a stronger wide receiver in Adams, if you can cut some of that almost in half, like take away maybe 6, 7 of those picks, where forcing a ball into Brian Edwards, who's not going to make the play, versus forcing it into Davante, who arguably is, I think is going to be one of those things that gets him over the hump. If you did that, like you say, maybe adding another 40 points to him from touchdowns and stuff like that. That's a big jump. That would have pushed him into the top 10 and stuff like that. So I feel like he's there. He definitely throws for yards throughout the season because he helps to drive that offense. He was top 5 in yards last year, with 4,800, which nowadays is nothing for an NFL quarterback. But again, I really feel that concept of bringing him into that locker room and having Davante Adams and him together. The running game looks a little suspect right now. There's a lot of talk about Josh Jacobs and why the heck did he play in a preseason game? And, is Zamir White going to be the guy? You got Kenyon Drake hanging around. Brandon Bolden's there from New England. Like they got a lot going on. But the passing game would probably be the way to go. They're going to run through that, run the offense through that, so to speak. And again, with Waller, with Renfro, and now you throw Davante Adams. You got Keelan Cole, you got Mac Hollins on the roster. Demarcus Robinson came over from Kansas City. So you have some people, some human beings that can play football. I kind of like the Keelan Cole under the radar thing there. He's never been a horrible wide receiver. I think with a decent offense like this, maybe he has a chance to really do something. But I like Derek Carr. I've always like had a soft spot for him. I know the guy like tries his hardest to be good, but I think this might be the year where you're finally giving him a top 5 wide receiver. And a lot of people fade Adams. You go, oh, well, now he's going to fall apart. Look, you gave him Derek Carr. I just can't see 2 guys together that can probably benefit from each other, and they both force each other to struggle, again, based off of that. So I like Derek Carr as a top 10 quarterback in fantasy this year. I think it's definitely possible, with some of the guys. Stafford's having elbow problems. Russell Wilson's on a new team. So some of those guys, Joe Burrow might have a Super Bowl hangover. You have a lot of stuff going on there. So to me, Derek Carr is a top 10. Yeah, I could see it happening. Going as low as 15 where you have him, definitely possible. Again, injuries happen, things like that. But I feel like if he can cut down on the interceptions and not feel that he has to force plays as much and to have that alpha in a Davante Adams there, I think that's going to benefit him and put him into that top 10 category.
Yeah, I like Carr as a player. I feel like, he's definitely never had, I don't want to say never had, but I just feel like they haven't really supplied him with the type of weapons that, you see a lot of these other top end quarterbacks being given as far as, pass catchers. And Darren Waller sort of came into his own a little bit late in his career and became a really good pass catcher. But I mean, how much of that is Waller's skill and how much of it was Derek Carr just sort of, over targeting the best player on his offense. You saw it last year with Hunter Renfrow. The guy had like 135 targets last year because there was really nobody else to throw to. So could Devontae Adams get a ton of targets? Sure. But to me, I don't think that means that Derek Carr necessarily goes up as far as his fantasy production. If you look back at Carr's career, he's only had one season where he's actually thrown for more than 30 touchdowns. He's averaging just under 25 touchdowns per year. And, again, depending on the type of league that you're in, you need touchdowns to bolster points. Yardage is great, but even like you said last year with him throwing for over 4,800 yards and being the top 5 in the league in yardage, he still finished as the QB 13. So without him running the ball, which he just doesn't really hardly ever do, with the lack in so far in his career anyway, touchdown passes, and you also have Josh McDaniels as the new head coach and play caller there. And if you remember, even when the Patriots had Tom Brady, they still ran the ball a lot, and they ran it especially in the red zone. So, that takes away a lot of the touchdown equity that Derek Carr might have throwing the ball to Devontae Adams or Darren Waller or whatever in the end zone. Do I think that he throws for, more than 30 touchdowns? Maybe. I think it's possible. With the weapons that they have, I do think that, and guys like Adams, sometimes he'll make a catch and turn, what should have been a first down and break a tackle or two and take it to the house. He's that kind of player. So I think that, Adams definitely helps. But for me to rank somebody inside the top 10 where you have him when he's never finished that high, I don't know. I like I said, I do think that Adams helps. I just don't know that. We've always seen good quarterbacks elevate wide receiver play. And I'm not saying that Devontae Adams isn't a star in this league and isn't a great wide receiver, but he's been playing with arguably the best quarterback in the league and one of the best quarterbacks probably in the history of the NFL in Aaron Rodgers for years. And that connection with that great of a quarterback has sort of propelled Adams to be, this guy that everybody thinks he's obviously mentioned in the conversation with top wide receivers in the league. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying, will Carr and Adams have that same chemistry? I know, like you said, they went back to college together, but I just don't. I don't know until I see it. And for me, there are some other guys that I like a little bit better. Some guys that have some rushing upside, some guys that have, more production over a lengthier career, like Matthew Stafford, who I would be more comfortable with as my starting quarterback. I like Carr, but I feel like for me, I wouldn't draft him as my starter. I would draft him. Let's say I was planning on streaming quarterbacks for the season, which is a strategy that I do. Something that we talk about in our draft tips and strategies episode. Streaming quarterbacks, tight ends, defenses, those one positions. I like Carr as one of those guys because I think, playing in that division, he's going to have some huge games. He's going to need to have some huge games in order to keep up with, the other offenses in that division now. So I do think that there is potential for him to have, a lot of big boom games. But he's also shown us the potential to sort of, disappear and have some really bad games along the way. So if he was like a streaming option, yeah, I would, I could see picking up a guy like Carr and taking somebody a little bit later like Fields or, somebody like that, Zach Wilson, somebody who, has the potential to step up and, and either of those guys do, like you said, they have potential to be in that top 10 range and finish it there. But for me, I would rather take those guys as a second quarterback in a 2 QB league or Superflex league or something like that, rather than relying on a guy like Derek Carr, who, like I said, who's never finished inside the top 13 to be a top 10 quarterback. But that's just, again, that's my opinion on it. And like I said, consensus, we have him at 12. That's honestly probably where he should be. You might be a little low. I might be a little high. But
I think you're a little high. with that, no.
I think probably our consensus rankings probably right on with him. He'll probably finish right around that QB 12 mark.
All right. So we are talking about another young quarterback this time. Another quarterback, a young one this time, not Derek Carr. He's no longer young. But we're going to talk about Justin Fields, who's going to get his first full season under center for the Chicago Bears. Bears had a lot of stuff happen in the offseason. New head coach, offensive coordinator, new scheme altogether. Wide receiver wise, you saw Allen Robinson leave and go to the Los Angeles Rams. Darnell Mooney is now going to be the guy they drafted, Velus Jones Jr., speedster, and then signed a whole bunch of guys that seems like almost every single one of them got arrested for something, I think, in the offseason. And have been having health issues and struggling during camp. Made a trade for N'Keal Harry, high ankle sprain. Byron Pringle has some issues. Amon-Ra St. Brown's brother, Equinemius St. Brown, came over from Green Bay. Daz Newsome, who was out of North Carolina last year, kind of a special teams guy, kind of guy, but, it's hard to tell what the heck's going to go on with this offense passing-wise. But that being said, you are talking about a quarterback in Fields who has the dual threat ability, can run, but is a lot more of a pocket passer and playmaker from that. He's not going to always look to run right away. He will take the big hit in the pocket. I think that's, with a mobile quarterback nowadays, everybody immediately thinks, take off and run. And he's not that guy. Like he will stand in the pocket. He will try to make plays as much as possible, based on what the offense gives him. I feel like he may be forced to do that a little bit more this year. Again, take off and kind of get things going. You have a pretty good running back, and now there's talk of a possible timeshare committee getting the backup more involved with David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, that both are very skilled on that level. Last year, he didn't play the whole season. He played in about 12 games. He had times he looked pretty good. At times he looked like a rookie. Definitely, and with that offense struggling the way that it did, the whole team throughout the season, he did take a lot of sacks, different things like that. So it does show you that he's willing to stay in the pocket, try to find his guy and get through, through his progressions and try to find that overall open receiver. With Mooney, I think people are very high on him this year because, again, he's going to get that volume as being the only guy that seems like he really knows what he's doing. Cole Kmet, tight end, is turning into a sleeper amongst tight ends. You're getting all that talk too. But if these guys have these big seasons, that's going to happen because of the quarterback. If Montgomery and Herbert have, good PPR stuff coming out of the backfield, that's going to happen because of the quarterback. I think that it's going to be a tricky year for Justin Fields because, again, you had a whole offensive scheme last year and it didn't work, but now you're entering an entirely new offseason with an entirely new coaching staff and scheme and things like that. But I feel like he's young enough, smart enough quarterback, played at Ohio State, comes out of a very good pro style offense on their level. So I think that you're probably going to see him take on that yoke of the leadership, the guy, this is my team. He doesn't have competition as far as, the Andy Dalton and worrying about stuff like that. Trevor Simeon's there just in case he gets hurt. Like that's really it. I think that the Bears might be a decent team this year. They're not going to probably make the playoffs, but probably close to like a 500 team. It's really just going to be getting that wide receiver room figured out. Is that going to help Fields out? Yes. I do think that he may have to rely on his legs a tiny bit more than he'd like to, and that's not going to be his fault. It's just going to be the way things go. Again, he did run for over 400 yards, but he didn't do it all the time. But he averaged close to 6 yards a carry. So if need be, he'll give you about 35 yards a game. And that just shows that, again, he's not Lamar Jackson. He's not leading your team in rushing with 120 yards and throwing for 104 with a total offense concept. He's going to be as good as the rest of the offense. That's really it. But I do think that if they scheme more to him and kind of get him involved, then do some rollout stuff and different things like that. It's not Matt Nagy with that dopey look on the sidelines, like not knowing what the heck's going on and being a lame duck coach. These guys are going to get involved quick. Not saying he's going to be Aaron Rodgers, but they're definitely going to look for ways to make him a better quarterback, a more efficient quarterback. And so far out of camp, things have been pretty good. Good news for him. And again, Mooney, Kmet, the running backs in the backfield will help to get him over the top. So I definitely think that he's got top 15 potential. And again, I think that'll be more through his arm than his legs. Pat, I know you're not as high on him as I am. You actually have him outside the top 20.
I've actually moved up on him a little bit recently. I have him right at 19 now.
Okay.
But I think for him, I'm torn because I have Trey Lance ranked fairly high, much higher than you actually, at quarterback 11, because I do believe that, again, depending on your scoring system and most, I don't want to say most, but I would say a majority of the leagues are probably still doing the old 4-point passing touchdown thing. If you're in a league with a 4-point passing touchdown scoring system, these quarterbacks that run the ball like Fields and Lance and Hurts and Jackson, these guys should be a lot higher up on your draft ranks or draft board, than your standard pocket passers, because first of all, you're not getting the same yardage totals. Obviously, it's usually 1 point for every 20 or 25 yards for the quarterback, and 1 point for every 10 yards. Rushing or receiving. So if you have a quarterback who throws for 300 yards and you're getting 1 point for every 25, passing yards, that's 12 points, and that's great. But a quarterback who rushes for 120 yards, not that that's common, but Fields ran for 103 during week 8 last year. It's definitely within his range of outcomes. So these guys who run the ball are basically just racking up points almost at twice the pace of the quarterbacks who don't. And because Fields has that rushing ability, and because at the end of last year, so basically from week 8 on, Justin Fields finished as a top 10 quarterback 4 out of the 5 games that he played. And the one game that he didn't was it was shortened due to injury in week 11. And each of those games, he ran the ball at least 7 times. So 7, 8, 9, and 10 times in those 4 games. So I do think that a lot of Fields' value is going to come out of the rushing game, especially considering the fact that the Bears don't have a ton of receiving weapons. Yes, Darnell Mooney looks like he could break out, and he had a really good season last year. But I mean, what have we really seen from him so far in his young career? And again, I'm not saying that Mooney isn't going to be good. I actually have Mooney, I believe, ranked higher than ADP because of the amount of targets that I think he's going to receive this year. Again, I'm with you on the whole Cole Kmet thing. I think he's one of my tight ends that I have probably ranked higher than ADP as well, because that Bears offense is going to have to throw the ball to somebody. But I can honestly see Justin Fields averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 9 rushes per game. And again, if you keep up with that 6-point average, which usually with quarterbacks, you get a little bit higher of an average because it's a pass play. A lot of guys are downfield. You break out. Quarterbacks, especially rushing quarterbacks, are a lot faster than most defensive linemen and linebackers. So when you do finally break out and run, you're picking up a decent chunk of yardage before you're either sliding or running out of bounds or whatever the case is. If you're a quarterback, you should be doing those things. But basically before you're tackled. So I think Fields could easily put up 50 to 60 yards on average per game. And if you extrapolate that out and he stays healthy and plays a full 17-game season, it only takes just a little over 58 yards per game to hit that 1,000-yard mark. I'm not saying I think Fields is going to be a 1,000-yard rusher. I have him more in the range of somewhere around 750 yards or so rushing, but I do think that he's going to give you – he's another one of these guys like Derek Carr, who I actually like to take in those drafts where I'm taking a quarterback really late. I usually like to grab a guy like Fields who, again, if he can turn it up with his arm, because he didn't have great passing stats last year in the games that he started. I think he threw 10 interceptions and only 7 passing touchdowns, which is obviously something that he's going to need to get better on, and something I think he will get better on as he goes. But I think as far as rushing goes, in just basically half a season, he ran for 420 yards on 72 rush attempts. So if you bring that up to, like I said, 120, 150 rush attempts, somewhere in that neighborhood, you're looking at around 750 to 800 yards. So, and then, obviously the rushing touchdowns that go along with it. And again, if you're in a 4-point passing touchdown league, guys who rush for touchdowns, it's obviously, it's like worth a touchdown and a half passing. So if you're in a league like that, I do think that Fields is a great option as a QB2, as a backup, as, again, somebody that you might want to stream. I don't necessarily think this year is the year that he's going to break into the top 12, which is why I have him ranked where I do. But I do like him as one of these guys that you can take a shot on later in the draft and, have the potential to have another, Jalen Hurts potentially. I mean, if you look at Hurts last year, everybody was like, oh, he can't throw the ball. He can't throw the ball. Yeah, great. He still finished as like the QB 6 or 7 in fantasy scoring. So you don't have to be a great thrower of the ball if you can run the way that Fields can. And I do like it's something, like I said, I moved him up a few spots. I can actually see myself moving him up a few more spots as we get closer to the season, just because, I'm hearing good things out of camp about, the rookie Velus Jones that they drafted. And, obviously, like you said, we both are big on Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney this year. So I think, I may be warming on Fields even a little bit more than
as you're talking about him. You see the potential. I know. It's just, like you said, you're not kicking him to the curb and you got him, you're not Chris Sims. He's not QB 35 in the league. I get what you're saying, but and again, I think, maybe the legs get a little more involved depending on how they scheme that whole offense. But yeah, overall, I do think he's definitely going to improve. I don't see him being a quarterback that struggles because of his own play. If anything, he struggles because of what kind of talent they have around him. And who knows, something could shake out. Some of those like veteran cuts that they end up picking up a stronger name of somebody at a wide receiver position, maybe to just kind of shore that up and give them an anchor. You have a couple guys still out there that are a little older, long in the tooth, but maybe gives him an extra wide receiver safety valve, like per se, like a Cole Beasley or somebody like that who's still out there and definitely a stronger receiver of the ball and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely. I see that. Next, Trevor Lawrence. This poor guy. Yeah, you say, oh, bad enough you're in Jacksonville. No, last year was just a lost season, a hell of a way to start out for a rookie quarterback coming out of a monster program at Clemson, national titles and things like that. Like this guy, the world was, his oyster, gets to play with his college running back. And then he gets hurt in camp. Urban Meyer was the coach. We watched that whole debacle happen. And it's just, I think this kid is a really good quarterback. And I think it's going to take a little time. He's got a good coach in Doug Peterson that's going to put him in a better position to be a good quarterback. I mean, a functional quarterback. That whole team was brutal on offense last year. And you watched it, and it wasn't because the players weren't good per se. It was because you had a rookie college head coach, you had a rookie quarterback. A lot of stuff worked against him. Did he flourish at all? Did he show anything tremendous? Not exactly. He definitely was near the bottom of the barrel for a lot of things. And that was based on the fact that they tried to do too much with him. And he didn't have a lot of weapons, so to speak, around him. They did make some signings in the offseason. Christian Kirk came on board. I saw where he had a little bit of a ding to him today in camp. So hopefully he's okay. Zay Jones, who kind of came on strong a little bit last year as a wide receiver, maybe starting to come into his own. With the Raiders, he came on board. Marvin Jones, a big consistent for him pretty much last year. And then once they kind of figured out that was one of the only guys he could go to, they started to key on him a little bit more. They've picked up Evan Ingram, who I am not really a big fan of, but there's hope that he's going to be, the next big thing as far as a pass catching tight end down there for them. You are getting Travis Etienne back, and it sounds like he's had a very strong camp coming back off the Liz Frank, so hopefully he stays healthy. I like this kid. I think I'd be very I'd be very shocked if he struggles the way he did last year. If he does, then maybe they broke him. I think he's got the potential with that offense. And Doug's a quarterback whisperer. We've seen it. Granted, he didn't have quite the first year, but Carson Wentz's second season, barring an injury, the guy had borderline MVP statistics and numbers and wins. And we know what happened to that Eagles team. I'm not comparing the two quarterbacks dead on like that. I feel like with a little bit more of a professional coaching staff, a professional offense, they shored up the offensive line. They're doing things to protect them. Because, again, this kid got his butt kicked last year, threw the ball a ton, which, you definitely expect a quarterback to do that. He was 7th in pass attempts, right behind Ben Roethlisberger. So he threw the ball more than Stafford, Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, so on and so forth. And, yeah, just didn't have the stats to show for it. Touchdowns, not really there again. Got sacked a lot. And shows a little bit fleet of foot. He did run for over 300 yards. So, he was probably running for his life, the poor guy. It's a shame. I feel like some people are going to be a little too low on him. I feel, Pat and I, obviously you have him a lot different than I do. I feel like he's got borderline top 15 potential. And again, that's with a lot more confidence in the coaching staff and the offense around them, and knowing that they're not going to just do what they did last year. Last year, they acted like he was a college freshman and, well, here you go, buddy. Here's your offense. Just go. I feel like that has really just put a black eye on him and his career, which it's not his fault. Again, he may struggle, definitely. And again, if their offense has issues with staying healthy and things like that. But overall, I think they're going to make him a more efficient quarterback. And I think he's got a little bit more of weapons to play with. Again, he got different guys, Laquan Treadwell, Agnew. He got different guys involved this year. And once they got rid of, they won 2 games with Urban Meyer. The last 4 games with Darrell Bevell as your interim coach, he won a game. So you basically had a better winning percentage with your interim coach, and he looked like he was getting a little more comfortable and confident. And they actually, maybe they didn't have the greatest game in the world, but they helped to knock the Colts out of playoff position. So it shows that, he can definitely kind of make things happen when given an opportunity. So I think that there's good things ahead for him. And I think I have him at 16. Pat, looks like you have him around at 23. Again, I'm outside the top 20. And again, he could struggle, but I think that offense as a whole is going to be, again, they're not going to be a top 10 offense, but a top 15, 17, where I have him at 16 as quarterback. Yeah, I think he's got the potential to do that. And again, getting a little action with his legs will help you quietly in fantasy. He's not as immobile as again, like a Matt Stafford or Kirk Cousins or something like that.
Yeah, I think that the reason I have him so low is just because of the touchdown to interception ratio from last year. He threw 12 touchdowns last year, started pretty much every game. 17 interceptions, though, and I get it. He's a rookie. That happens. I mean, even Peyton Manning threw a ton of interceptions his rookie year. For me, yes, I get the whole Urban Meyer thing and all of that. I don't see what they did in the offseason other than spend a ton of money on mediocre players as a real upgrade for Lawrence. Christian Kirk was basically the 3rd option on the Cardinals. And, Jacksonville signed him to this deal like he was, some number 1 receiver that I just didn't understand.
Oh, the GM's brutal. Yeah. I agree with you on that. He'd make some tough signings down there.
Yeah, he's kind of the butt of the league as far as GMs go. I don't understand how that guy still has a job, but to me, again, you said this, the Evan Ingram signing, again, doesn't move the needle for me at all. Sure, maybe some of his mediocre seasons that he's put in have been more because of the Giants offense than, his individual, ability. But moving him to the Jaguars, now, you put Evan Ingram on a team you put him on a team with a good quarterback and somebody who, is going to target him a lot. I think he's got the athletic ability to be a good fantasy producer. But I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just jaded a little bit by the Jaguars' sort of reputation and them just sort of being bad for so long that I can't bring myself to. I just don't feel like they've done enough to turn this thing around yet. And yeah, by ranking him where you have him at 16, that by no means means that he's changed the culture of the franchise, and now they're going to be a 500 team, and they're on their way to turning things around and making the playoffs in a year or two. Maybe they are. I don't know that. I can't see the future obviously, but just predicting this year, I don't see a ton of difference again other than the coaching staff that makes me think that things are going to be different this year than they were last year. He finished as the QB 22 overall last year. Maybe I have him a little bit low at 23. I do think that he takes a step up. Obviously, there's usually a pretty decent sized jump between year one and year two when it comes to quarterbacks. But I think I would have been a little bit more optimistic on him had they gone out and signed, somebody more along the lines of, say, treated for like a Deontay Johnson or, a Terry McLaurin, like one of these guys that got paid in the off season that, maybe weren't happy with their situation. Christian Kirk just doesn't do it for me, and that's just kind of the way that I see things. I do think that Lawrence could have a better year than where I have him ranked. A lot of my, like I said before, my rankings kind of have a little bit of a confidence factor built in. I would much rather have a guy like Matt Ryan, who I have ranked one spot above Lawrence, just because I know Matt Ryan has done it before, and I believe in the weapons in Indianapolis a lot more than I do in Jacksonville, personally.
I got 3 words for you. Passing game coordinator. I got 3 more words for you. Jim Bob Cooter. All right. And you're laughing, I know, but like, dude, he did some stuff with Matt Stafford after Megatron left and kept him a consistent quarterback. I think really, and I know, Pat, I know what you mean. Like, you're definitely like, dude, A, it's Jacksonville. B, the way they looked last year, it just looked like they couldn't play against like Alabama, let alone other teams. And I just think that it's going to be a reset year. It's almost going to be like rookie year 1.1, like 1.2. Like it's definitely going to be another adjustment, but I think the offense is going to be a lot more professional, the coaching, and I think that's going to be huge for him. Like you said, you're not confident in him, making sure that he's a young enough quarterback to realize, hey, look, last year it's on me. Maybe it really wasn't on him as much, but it's on me. Let's reset. And yeah, Kirk, he's not the killer that you're hoping to have in your offense, but some of those other players that might be able to get it done. And again, that just maybe means that, Etienne, maybe if James Robinson gets back to be healthy, if they're using them out of the backfield a little bit more too. Dan Arnold wasn't a bad tight end for him last year when healthy. He had a couple decent games, I think, where he was, a top 10 tight end for their couple weeks there, and then got hurt and that kind of fell off. So I do think the potential is there for him to succeed. And again, I get where you're a little gun shy because, you're not really picking up a lot of Jaguars for your fantasy football team at this rate, Matt, definitely. So totally understand that, you're just not comfortable with him just yet.
The last guy that we were going to talk about, we were going to talk about Deshaun Watson. This was, we sort of set this podcast up during that whole, Deshaun Watson fiasco. And then it came out that he was going to be suspended for 6 games. And with that information, I sort of ranked him or adjusted his rank based off of that information. Now we're hearing, obviously, that the NFL is appealing the suspension, and they're going to be assigning Roger Goodell is going to be assigning a designee to basically dole out a different suspension, a different discipline to Watson, other than the 6-game suspension that was handed out originally. I feel like we probably should hold off on talking about Watson until we figure out what's going on, because the NFL had been pushing for at least a full season. The way that they worded it was an indefinite suspension of at least 1 year, meaning indefinite just basically means that they're suspending him forever, and then he would have to appeal. But the 1 year timeline would be he couldn't be reinstated until after he had missed an entire season. The Browns structured his contract so that he could miss a year and only lose $1 million of his contract, or of his $236 million contract that he signed. So for Watson, it's kind of going to be difficult. I had him ranked up at 16 just due to the fact that, I felt like getting 11 games out of him, again, he would be in that range where, you could potentially pick him up as a, put him on your bench and just use him in the second half of the season. But now that it looks like his suspension may be extended and he may miss the entire year, is there really much to talk about with him? I mean, other than as far as fantasy goes, I mean, there's a ton to talk about, if you want to talk about his situation. But when it comes to fantasy, we were really far off. You had him at 48. I had him at 16. I think maybe you had a little bit better view of how this was going to play out and sort of just ranked him at the bottom.
I think he's unrankable. I mean, I think he's even before the 6 games, just again, things that you've heard and stuff, but knowing that, you're going to suspend Calvin Ridley for a season for gambling. You're going to slap different guys on the wrist for different things here and there that have been of violent natures off field. You have something like this where it's such a black eye on the league as a whole. Again, you have a lot of female fans, and it's not just ladies that are upset with this, fans as a whole. Like me, back in the day, when, Adrian Peterson had the whole issue where, we got in trouble for hitting his kid with, caning stuff with sticks, whatever. I was just personally, for me, I was like, nah, man, look, I want to correct my kid. Back in the day, yeah, maybe you got a belt or you got spanked because you're a bad kid. But things that are like over the top to me are too much. Personally, for me, I would never, ever think about taking this guy, period, for personal reasons. Just like, again, me personally, Pat, I'm an Eagles fan, so I don't take Cowboys, Giants, and Redskins, Commanders. Apologies. Commanders. Yeah, no offense. It's not hate. But I will never take those players because I just, as dumb as it sounds, I don't want to root against my team twice a year so that Ezekiel Elliott eats. No, not worried about it. Like I'd rather not. And to my detriment, whatever, that's fine. And people are like, oh, you're an idiot. Yeah, I am. But still, that has nothing to do with it. My whole thing is that, like, this guy, for what happened, you already missed a season. Like, I think we all kind of forget for a second that, last year he did not play for the Houston Texans. You had, Davis Mills, who I kind of came on a little bit there and really started to be looking like a decent young quarterback. So he didn't play last year. He's not, I just don't see it happening. He's not going to play this year. And the indefinite suspension for the league, I think that this is going to make them restructure their entire disciplinary process, where they went to an independent arbitrator. The judge, it was her first go around. She gave him the 6 games based off of things that have happened in the league before. But, you're going to say that this guy, I wouldn't leave this guy alone with anybody, but he can continue his professional sports career and represent the league and the Cleveland organization and all that. The fans were like cheering and clapping for, they were happy to have the quarterback. You have those blinders on that, this is going to come up, and it's going to be between the league and the NFLPA where you're going to really have something happen. And I think even the Players Association knows that, look, it's one thing to go to bat for a guy that gambled or a guy that got a little hot-headed and, maybe put hands on somebody that he shouldn't have or had a DUI or something like that. But you're looking at like what happened with, you have a Henry Ruggs situation last year, which is completely different than this. That man will never play football again, and he took lives and made really stupid decisions, and it's affected families and stuff like that. This is not that level, but this is also abhorrent. Michael Vick back in the day, he got suspended. He went to jail. Like, these are things that are considered heinous for the league, and I can't see them embracing him and having him on a TV, let alone. So that means the Cleveland Browns will never play. If he's their quarterback, they're never going to put him on Monday Night Football. They're never going to put him on Sunday Night Football, Thursday Night Football. They don't want him to be that guy. They just want him to get lost in the red zone for a couple highlights. So you're actually hurting the whole team by doing this. And I think Cleveland screwed themselves by signing him to this deal, thinking, oh yeah, we'll just blow past it. They have no way of getting out of this. You're going to pay a guy to play football and he's not allowed to play for you for at least a year, probably, again, I really feel that way. And you're not getting out from under this. Like there's no, oh, we can cut him, we can trade him. You're just going to bleed out money and have him be an anchor on dragging you to the bottom on that concept. I would be stunned if they turn around and don't get this indefinite suspension. And again, whether or not it's this year and next year or this year, and he's going to have to do so much to get back in the good graces of the league. I think where I just don't see it happening. And yeah, I think to talk about him like this, I don't think you can say, well, him clicking in that offense, like there's nothing right now that you can see there. So I think Jacoby Brissett, is definitely going to be their guy, so to speak. And I think you could see a possible like Jimmy Garoppolo trade. He wants out. The Niners are willing to move him. It would almost be a perfect storm. So they have I know Niners fans don't think so, but a good starting quarterback on a team that has a lot of potential and a lot of young players. I think that would behoove them to make that move and try to bring some zest to that franchise where this is going to hurt them too. I'm sure that locker room's looking around like, man, you got this guy here. You got Kareem Hunt who wants out because he's not playing. You got a lot of stuff going on. So I can't see this Watson thing doing anything anytime soon. I think he's done for.
Yeah, I think this season is definitely a wash. There's some scenarios where he could sue the league and potentially play this year or whatever. But like I said, the way that Cleveland set up his contract, it almost was as if they knew a year-long suspension was coming and they structured his contract so that he would lose the least amount of money as possible, which, again, just kind of goes to show like you said, sort of the level of nonchalantness that the Cleveland Browns organization has handled this entire situation with. Now, with that being said, I do want to reiterate and sort of point out that everything that is being acted upon, used as far as basis for this suspension, none of these charges have been. Watson has not been charged with anything. He hasn't been convicted of anything. So understand that the reason and the basis of these charges are still technically allegations. Yes, I know that Watson settled out of court with most of the women that had brought some things against him, but just because he settled doesn't necessarily mean that he's guilty. It obviously looks that way, but you have to remember that until you're in the way this country works and, the justice system, until you're actually proven guilty in a court of law, you're innocent. Now, the court of public opinion can see it any way that they want. And a lot of people do believe, that he did at least some of the things that were that he's accused of doing. So, a lot of people are like, oh, well, you wouldn't settle if you didn't do something wrong. I don't necessarily believe that that's 100% true. I think that when you have enough money to where you can pay for a problem to go away rather than grow, they did try to, try him. They tried to, bring him to court, and they could not find enough evidence to do so. So either he's really good at covering up his tracks, or it's always possible that some of the things that he was accused of were not 100% accurate. So I don't want to sit here and pretend or sit here and say that, what he did was wrong or right or whatever. I'm not a judge. That's not for me to decide. Sticking to the fantasy football, though, yes, I do believe that he is going to get suspended for the entire year. And that obviously will change my rankings as far as where I believe he'll finish, which, obviously would be at the very end of the league. But just for anybody that's listening, just to understand that, if you're not following this Watson saga closely, just understand that, the league's personal conduct policy and the court's legal procedure that they go through are two completely different things. The league is allowed to suspend for things that they feel are detrimental to the shield, to the NFL, based on personal conduct. And so that's where this suspension is coming from. It's not coming from a place of him being convicted for any crimes or anything like that. So just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware, because I see a lot of stuff out there sort of condemning Deshaun Watson as if he's guilty. And he may be, but he was never technically proven guilty in a court of law. So we do have to remember to keep that in perspective. Well, I think that's going to be it for the quarterbacks then. And I think that's going to be it for this episode. I mean, we went a little bit long, as we usually do on the quarterbacks. So we'll hit our tight ends. We were planning on doing tight ends today too, but we'll get into that and make that its own separate episode, which is fine. Remember to follow us on social media. We are on Twitter at the 9route1 and at Scott from Delco. Also, go ahead and check out our website, which is www.the9routeFFB.com. Don't forget to follow and review the show. Send us those screenshots for your chance to enter to win the Darius Slay jersey. And before we sign off, I just want to say thank you to Mickey's Port of Call Pub in Tuckerton, New Jersey. Mickey's is partnering with us to offer a place to have your fantasy football draft if you're looking to go out, have some good food, some drinks, and just have a nice time. Be sure to check them out on the internet. They are at www.mickeysportofcallpub.com. Their events are on there. You can sign up to have your fantasy football draft right there in the pub. And I can tell you that the food is excellent. We actually go there. My wife and I go there quite a bit. And we also get takeout from there because their food is that good. So everybody check that out. If you're in South Jersey in the Long Beach Island, Tuckerton area, check out Mickey. Before we go, do you have anything you want to put out there?
Yeah, no. Again, Mickey's, thank you very much for all your assistance there. I am not in the Tuckerton area, so I do not frequent. No offense, but looks like a great place. Talking about quarterbacks, we're going to get into other things, rankings and things like that. I really think that this is going to be an interesting NFL season. Most of the COVID stuff seems to be pretty far behind us. I know they have some protocols in place, so we'll see if things take effect through camp. Keep an eye on their injuries, any hot news. Everybody's doing great in camp, and then once they get on the field, we'll see what actually happens. But, definitely keep an eye out for some of those. We're going to go dive deep and get you that information that you need. So, again, for Pat, this is Scott, and we appreciate you guys listening here at the 9 Route, and we'll look to get into tight ends on our next episode. Peace.